What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Today, I talk with Derek Guimond, a volleyball player who took an opportunity to play in another country before creating his own company to help aspiring volleyball players do the same at the college level. It's an unorthodox and insightful story of doing what you're passionate about by any means. So once again, welcome back to the A2A podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Back with another A2A podcast conversation. Today, sitting down with Derek, as I said in the intro. Derek, really happy that finally we can catch up. I know we've had a little bit of technical difficulties before, so good thing that we're now sitting down and ready to chat. But as always, I always love when people kind of give their own spiel about who they are and where they're from and a little bit of background about them. So I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really happy to be here. So my name's Derek Guimond. I'm a lot of things, I guess, in the sports world, but I guess predominantly I help athletes to continue playing sports outside of NCAA or NAIA sports. But my background is in volleyball. I was a collegiate volleyball player and a walk-on at Loyola Chicago. And I guess where it all started is that, when I was in high school, I was a basketball player, football player, didn't really know anything about volleyball. I remember my mom telling me I should play volleyball, and I was like, I don't want to play a women's sport. It's just not my thing. But they told me that during the spring season I had to do something, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And I remember just falling in love with it. I could jump real high, but my technique was not so good. But my freshman year in high school, I ended up playing every single level at the high school, freshman B, freshman A, then JV, and they pulled me up to varsity at the end of the year. And I was just like, you know what, maybe there's something in this. And so, I quit basketball and football, and then I went all in with volleyball. And then I got kind of smacked in the face a little bit just by life, because I didn't get a lot of offers coming out of high school. I didn't get anything in D1. I had a few like D3 offers at schools I wasn't really interested in. And so I guess the two options that I had that I was really excited for was to either go to Pepperdine out in California, because Malibu, California, or to go to Loyola Chicago. Yeah, right. Beaches, babes, the whole shebang. Or go to Loyola Chicago, which was just down the street. Because I'm from Evanston, Illinois, which is the suburb just north of Chicago. I decided to go there because I had an academic scholarship. So if I couldn't walk onto the team, then I'd have something to fall back on. And that ended up being really good for me because I didn't make it. I got cut after the first week of tryouts. And I just remember just being in a really sunk place. My whole identity at that point was that, hey, I'm going to be a college volleyball player. And then I wasn't. I wrote this in my article, when you guys were asking me for my story and whatnot. And I think that story can resonate with a lot of people, because at the end of anyone's sporting career, you got to do something else. A lot of people are blessed where they can stick with athletics or sports, or, maybe go into, announcing or commentary after playing pro or something. But the reality of being an athlete is that everybody stops at some point, and only a few are going to be lucky enough to play pro. And so, when I was cut, it was just heartbreaking, really, because my career ended before it had even begun, or at least that's how it felt. So I played club volleyball. I did like organizations, joined a fraternity, got internships in the summers and whatnot, and, kept grinding. I was still friends with a lot of the guys on the team. And I was watching in the stands, actually, in Chicago when they won their first national championship. I remember being so proud of all of them, because that was just sick. Like they sold out the arena. They won it in, really, really formidable fashion. Like they just smoked Stanford. It was just super easy for them. And I was just like, dang, like I wish I could be out there with them. And, I got my opportunity because a few guys quit after that year. They just, didn't want to keep playing. And there was a spot open on the team. I tried out again and I made it. As a senior, my last year, I was a rookie again because I was essentially a first-year player. And so I had to, be with all of the rookies on the team. And whenever the freshmen screwed up, as freshmen do, I would get punished too. So, there's this one story that I'm never going to forget where, like, I think, one of the freshmen was just, I don't know, they did something that they weren't supposed to do. And we wake up for practice next day and, like, they're getting punished, except I'm getting punished too. And I remember being so pissed. I was just like, these guys are making mistakes. And I think that was something that our coach had designed because he wanted maybe me to put them in line, so to speak. But we had a good relationship, and I kind of stepped into that role as a leader for the younger guys, just to set a good example for them and what they should and should not do. Because after I was running sprints for them, I was telling them, I was like, guys, I'm never doing that again for you guys, and, like, you got to be smarter. And they were, and we ended up winning another national championship that year. And I mean, to be honest with you, it was one of the most epic volleyball games that could ever be played, because we played against Lewis, which was our conference rival, who we beat in the conference championships to get a bid to go back to the national championships. And when we met them in the final of the national championships, we ended up going to 5 sets because volleyball is best of 5 sets, and it's to 25 points for the first 4, and then the last set it's to 15. And I think the final score in the 5th set was like 21-19 or something. So we had a lot of extra volleyball, and it was a battle. Everybody left everything out on that court. I remember being exhausted. I didn't play a minute of that game, and I was just drained at the end of it, because it was so mentally taxing. But yeah, after 1 year of college volleyball, it's just like, what's next? Like what can happen? And I remember back when I was in high school, when I quit playing basketball and football, some of my basketball and football friends had asked me, oh, you're doing volleyball? Okay, that's cool. Like, do you think you could play pro? And I was just like, professional volleyball? I don't think that that's a thing. Like, I've never heard of it. I didn't even know any of the men's national team players at that time. But I ended up playing what you would consider professional volleyball. For me, it was more semi-pro. It's not something where you're going to earn a whole boatload of money and then be able to retire on it or something like that. That's not the level of a player that I am. But I've been playing professionally, semi-pro, for the last 8 years since graduating from college, as a former club player to now playing in Europe. So after I graduated, I remember just having another existential crisis. I was sitting on my couch one morning eating pizza in the summer, just thinking, like, okay, what do I do now? Yeah. And I had a job offer to go back to one of the companies that I had interned at, which was UBS. But I wasn't very excited about it. It wasn't something that I was jumping for joy over. I still wanted to play. And one of my buddies from the team, Rob Chilcote, he's now a coach actually at Brown for the women's volleyball team. He told me, look, like, I got a full scholarship to go out to England, and they need another player. Like, are you up for it? I was just like, shoot, I'm not doing anything else. Might as well.
Yeah, why not?
And we didn't know anything about the program. We didn't know anything about the league, really. We didn't know anything about volleyball in the United Kingdom. And it ended up being the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. And I've been out in Europe ever since. So I played there in England for a year. We ended up making it to the semifinals of the Cup with a team that had no chance of being there previously, because we weren't even in the top division. We were in the division below that. And so for us to make it to the semifinals was just unprecedented. It was the first time the club had made it there, I think, ever, which was awesome. And, after that, I moved and I went to London, and I worked in London for 2 years after I got my MBA at the University of Essex in 1 year. Moved to London, worked in consulting for a few years, and I played for a professional team there called IBB Polonia London. And we had some really, really interesting times there as well, because it was an incredibly interesting experience. We were playing with kind of a hodgepodge team of players, British guys, Polish guys, Romanian, one American, me, at least in the first year. And we had entered something called the STEV Cup, which is the second highest professional international competition in volleyball. So there's Champions League, STEV Cup, and then STEV Challenge Cup, and we were in STEV Cup. Again, it was an English team, the first time an English team had done that ever, and nobody thought that we would do anything. And we ended up winning our first matchup. So how it goes is you play one away game, one home game, and then let's say it's tied after that, or the set total is tied. You play a golden set, I think, to 15, and that determines who advances. So, and we're a team where a lot of the guys are working full time, and like people are taking vacations in order to play for the team. And I couldn't even make it to the first game. And at this point, I was a rotational player. I wasn't the starter, but I was like the third middle, so like the sixth man off the bench, so to speak. And we lost like 3-0 in Hungary to a team called Fino Kapospar, which is a pure professional team, and they've got a lot of like really high international players. And then our home court, because IBB Polonia London has a very strong Polish affiliation, we played in Belhatu, the Skra venue, which is one of the best professional teams in Poland. We played at their home venue in front of their fans on Polish national TV. And we end up winning and pushing a golden set. And, there's a clip of this somewhere. It's like, it's not in high quality, but I'm back to serve in the golden set. And like, we're tied, and like, I'm just doing my best not to black out. I'm trying to put the ball in, put in a good serve, and like, win this game. And we do it. I serve, I think, 3 or 4 good balls, and we end up getting ahead and winning the golden set. And like, all of us are just in disbelief. We're just like, how do we do this? And there's like 5,000 fans there. There's Olympians there in the crowd, and like, we're just ecstatic, like completely unprepared to win. Like, of course we were trying to win. Of course, that's what we were preparing to do. But we didn't really know what to expect, because this was, uncharted waters for us. And we end up winning and moving on to the next round. We play against a really strong Dutch team, Dresma Dynamos. And I think we either lose in 4 sets at their place, or we lose in 3, and then we push 5 sets. And I think so we lose, I think, in 3. We push 5 sets and win at home. And this time we play in England at Crystal Palace in front of another sold-out crowd. And I think we win in 5, but it didn't matter because of the set differential. We couldn't push a golden set. So we lose to them, but we had done something just completely unbelievable. And when I'm there on the court, I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is freaking awesome. Like, I had no idea I could be out here. I had no idea like a club player could do this, and I didn't know that this is what professional volleyball actually was. And after that season, I played another year there. Had some problems with my visa, and so me and my girlfriend moved to Cyprus, which is where she's from. And I played professionally for 3 years, and now I'm playing in the 2nd division. It's my 2nd year there, and I'm transitioning into playing golf and beach volleyball, because you can play beach volleyball until you're in your 40s. There's actually an AVP event going on right now in Central Florida, and one of my really good friends and college teammates, Cody Caldwell, is competing. He's actually one of the players that he's the only professional player that we sponsor right now. But we send him some money so he can support his career. And yeah, like I'm definitely winding down on the playing things, but I've definitely been more business guy than volleyball guy. And back in 2018, 2017, really, I started doing recruitment for some of the universities in the UK. Bringing in players for their teams, because coaches had reached out to me and said, hey, do you know anybody that might be interested? And I've grown that into a successful business, and now I no longer do consulting. I have my own business, and I also work as a professional volleyball agent with Tomasic Agency. And so those are my full-time gigs, is recruitment and professional agency work. Although I still, dabble in some sports and whatnot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a really cool kind of path that, and as I said before, like, it's a unorthodox path, right? Where not a lot of people take that path. And I kind of want to backtrack to one of the things you said about your mom getting you into volleyball. What was it? Was she a volleyball player? What was it about volleyball that she wanted her son to end up playing? Because a lot of times you hear, hey, you should do track and field when you're not playing football, right? You should do something else that translates to one of the other major sports that you're playing. But she wanted you to play volleyball. What was it about volleyball that made her want to push you towards that, and then ultimately made you love it?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. I'm gonna have to ask her. But I think what had happened is that, like, one of the moms or somebody, like, in the PTA or something, or like one of her friends, had told her, "Hey, Derek could be a volleyball player." And I think that mom, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was Mrs. Brieva, and her daughters played volleyball, and I think she was a collegiate basketball player and collegiate volleyball player. So she maybe saw something in me or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask her for the right story for that one. But I think that's it.
What was it for you then, once you start playing, that said, basketball and football aren't where I want to put my passion, right? What made you do that hard pivot after just kind of, just shunning it for a while when your mom brought it up as a topic?
So one of the reasons is because I was good at it. And, when you're good at something, you're just like, all right, like, I want to do this because I'm good at it. And it became a passion for me. Like, it was something I'd think about. It was something that, like, I couldn't see myself not doing it. But that was kind of instantaneous because, for volleyball is not something a lot of people are super familiar with, but it's kind of like, it's a technical sport, like, whereas with basketball and football, of course you need technique, but it's also, those are very athletic sports. Like, you can just be a freak athlete and immediately be a pretty good ball player. For volleyball, you can be a freak athlete and you can absolutely suck. So, I didn't get good with technique until I was in my late 20s. But that's just because I didn't start early enough. So it's kind of like, gymnastics and tennis kind of put together, but with the athleticism of basketball, because, you got guys that are basically slam dunking every play. So I really liked it. Another analogy, actually, which is relevant to this, because I'm not like a great athlete, I'm a good athlete. Like, I can dunk and stuff like that, but I'm not like phenomenal or anything. A really good friend of mine, Brooks Sador, who played professionally for a number of years, and he played collegiately at Hawaii. He said that volleyball is like the D3 sport of the world. It's where athletes can go to be good at something, like, relatively easily. And I think that that's true, because people generally follow, like, where the money is. So they go to the big name sports. And I recognize that I could never be a great basketball player or football player, but maybe, just maybe, I could be a great volleyball player. So
yeah,
ended up only being a good one, but that's it.
Yeah. So one, and I know you touched on it, as your career is going on and you decide to walk on and everything else, and then get back on the team as a senior, what made you want to go back and play after being cut, right? Because, we hear stories about, Michael Jordan being cut from his, like, JV basketball team in high school, you know what I mean? And obviously he doesn't give up on that, but we hear stories where their guys are like, all right, well, I got cut, I did my best, I still have the passion and fire, I'm going to try and find another avenue. You stayed, obviously, at that school where you could have gone somewhere else. Obviously, University of Illinois is very close, it's in your hometown, so you could have, ultimately transferred or gone somewhere else. What made you stick to it, stick one with that school, and then stick to going back and trying to play for that same team?
That's such a good question. I just knew, like I had that instinct that there was something there that I needed. And I think I just needed like to prove I felt like I needed to prove to everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean like, my friends, family, whatnot, that I could do it. But the reality of it is that I needed to prove to myself that I could. And, I can't imagine life without having done that. So it never crossed my mind to say no to an opportunity like that. Like it's something I never forgot about. I think the very next day after getting cut, I was back in the gym. I was working out, trying to get better. And, it was just something that never left me. So when I had that opportunity, I was so ready. I was so ready for it. Like, yeah, just never left.
Yeah.
Never left me at all.
Now, as a high school athlete, are you taking visits? You said you didn't really get recruited. You had some D3 offers. Are you taking visits to different schools? Obviously, you see the potential of the school you end up at.
Yeah.
But what was it that, what other schools did you look at, and what was it about, Loyola that made you want to stay there?
Yeah. So I had pretty good grades, like not great grades, but like I took AP classes and whatnot. So I had a relatively high GPA. But I didn't have a good enough GPA to get into like Ivy League schools. So I definitely tried to play at Ivy League schools because they could, let's say, grease the hinges, so to speak, to get somebody with a subpar Ivy application in. So I tried to get into Princeton. I tried to get into Harvard, no chance at either. I had a visit at Stanford, and I did have a possibility going there. Pepperdine, I had an opportunity to walk on at, and then Loyola, I had an opportunity to walk on at. So in high school, I was in like the USA developmental pathway, but at the very bottom rung. So there wasn't a lot of teams looking out for me, but there were teams that would consider taking me as like a practice player, probably like walk on no scholarship type deal or something like that. And the very last tournament of the summer, my senior year of high school, this is before you have to make your decision and whatnot. I just had a really poor showing. I was working as a lifeguard at the time, and like I think like all the beach running and stuff had maybe like done something to my tendons or my muscles because I just wasn't jumping high. I wasn't super athletic. I can touch over 11 feet, and back then I could. But in that tournament, I'd be lucky enough if I was jumping high enough to dunk. So I just wasn't doing very well. And I remember a few games where coaches that I've been speaking with came to see me, and I just was not performing well. So chalk it up to, body letting me down or just being unlucky. But after that, just didn't have any offers, only the walk-on opportunities. So, yeah.
So academically, when you're looking at schools, what are you looking to get into? What ends up being your major?
Yeah. So I double majored in English literature and finance. And another reason why I chose Loyola is because they had this interdisciplinary honors program, which think of it as like a minor, but it's like both religion and philosophy. And although it crushed my GPA, like I graduated with just under a 3.5. Without that, I probably would have had like a 3.8 because they were tough classes, like really writing intensive. But those classes were some of the most fundamental, just in terms of like what I learned as a person and, how I've kind of looked at life and approached life ever since. But I did English literature because I really enjoy writing, and I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. But my dad told me one time, he's like, son, there's a lot of starving artists out there. You should do something practical too. And I was like, all right, yeah, you're right. I'll do a business degree as well. Because he also said, like, look, you've got talent as, a business person. And that ended up being, good because all the jobs that I've had have been in business, and some of them have had aspects of writing. But it's, I think doing that both in tandem is probably good because everybody's got to eat, you know what I mean? And, unless you're selling books, it's not so easy to be a writer, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, I know. I have an English degree myself. I did the writing
Yeah.
part, so you're preaching to the choir on that one. It's not easy to get into it. Luckily enough, I did the journalism route with it. So, but no, I completely get it. You gotta go somewhere else with it, because unless you're writing, 2-3 books a year and they're selling out, it's tough to, to do the writing thing.
Absolutely. Do you still write?
I do. I'm an editor, and then I also write some articles and things like that, some freelance stuff, and
That's
then I do
awesome.
freelance commentary as well. So, I'm either talking on here or talking for wrestling matches and stuff like that. So there's a lot that goes on. Thank God I did that journalism route, because if not, like you said, I'm not writing 2-3 books a year. I'll be lucky if I'm reading 2-3 books a year at this point, because of how much I have going on, right? So it's definitely one of those things. You always love literature, but man, it is a hard route to take. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, because I took a very similar path, and I changed my major a couple of times before I
Yeah.
figured out what I wanted to do. And you hear a lot of other students that want to do, they think they want to do something, and they get there and they're like, oh, this isn't really working, right? Did did you ever hit like that academic wall where you're like, man, this really isn't working out. This isn't something that I can see myself doing? Because, once you get to college, it's, we say this all the time, it's not just the 4 years. It is very much longer than the 4 years. It's complete career path, right? So
Yeah.
was there ever, and obviously we're thinking past college, of this is something that's going to set me up for life. Did you ever have that notion where you were just like, I love doing this, but is it going to set me up to do what I want to do later on in life?
Yeah. That's another great question. I mean, whether it's because I'm stubborn or just dumb, if I make a decision, I stick with it. So I never second guessed myself, but yeah, there were definitely times where, like, it was super late and I was writing another paper. I was just like, you know what, screw this. But
Yeah,
I never tried to change. I never really considered dropping one of them. I was just like, you know what? I made this choice. I'm just gonna grit my teeth and push through it. But yeah, like there were a couple of times where, like, I wanted to go out or do something, and, like, I was stuck writing a paper, and I just said, oh yeah, I'll wake up the next day and I'll finish it. And then maybe I would go to the class and try my best to pretend not to be sleeping or something. But a lot of coffee helped that as well. A lot of coffee, I would say.
yeah.
Yeah.
So your career, as we've heard, it's unconventional completely. You don't hear about a lot of guys that, I mean, you do hear people that go overseas, play overseas, they play in different countries and things like that. But cut as a freshman, make it back on the team, don't see a ton of playing time, but now have so much international success where you're playing in sold out arenas and everything else like that. And you said, you kind of had that surreal moment of, this is incredible. This is something that I did not foresee during my lifetime. But not only are you playing, you're also helping other athletes to have a similar path to, leave the United States, go play overseas. How did all of that come to fruition? And was that a path that you saw yourself taking once you started playing overseas?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was another thing that kind of just appeared because, being an entrepreneur is not something I had ever had any interest in. Starting my own company, like I'd always thought of it as like, wow, that's super cool. Like, that's something I would like to do. But then when I would consider it, I'd just be like, I have to earn whatever I'm going to end up, being able to spend. Like, this is too much pressure. I'd rather just get a job where there's safety and, I can, have the ability to, eat and pay my rent and everything like that. So it became a nights and weekends sort of thing until it became a necessity. So when we left London in 2018 and moved to Cyprus, I was still working in consulting, but I couldn't really, count on that staying because the company was based in London and I was now in Cyprus, and I had a contract with them for a year. And after that, anything could happen. And realistically, I wouldn't have been able to stay out here, getting a job in Cyprus, it just wouldn't pay enough. And, salaries in the States are a lot better. And so I really, really grounded out there. And, props to my girlfriend for that, because her and her family have a family business, and it's something that her dad built from the ground. And, they work Monday through Saturday, and they work a lot of hours. And I think that sort of motivated me to do the extra lap, go the extra mile. And I think that's also a very athlete thing. A lot of athletes are self-motivating. A lot of athletes have entrepreneurial characteristics that they can, transfer from their sport into the business world. And so the recruitment and professional agency work became my full-time job at the end of 2018 and in the beginning of 2019, and I haven't looked back since. But also, I have to give a lot of credit to the University of Essex MBA, because our program director, Jay Mitra, is a leading academic in the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial studies space. And he really introduced us, my cohort there, to the idea of being an entrepreneur. And there were some people that have had family businesses or had their own businesses that were in that MBA specifically for that. But it wasn't something that I even remotely considered until that course, and not something that I really saw myself doing until I started doing it. But, when that first invoice comes in from something that you've negotiated and earned and worked towards, it's addicting. And once you get into that race, I think, it's something that a lot of athletes can do. And if you look at athletes, professional athletes, a lot of them go into, owning businesses and managing portfolios or their own portfolios. And whether that's because they have the capital or not, or whether it's because they have the mentality, I think a lot more athletes, if they put that trust in themselves, they could take their skills and talents and package it into a product or a service. They just need to have that, motivation to do it. And so, yeah, like another part of your question though, just like about the recruitment and empowering other athletes, it's something that I take great pride in, because I worked at SIBO, I worked at UBS in wealth management and corporate finance back in college. And, while those were very great occupations and those are very, good lines of work, I'm not disparaging them at all. I just didn't take any sort of emotional or spiritual benefit from it. I wasn't proud of myself for doing those roles. But now working with athletes and helping to find them opportunities to continue playing and to continue studying, I love that. When somebody comes back to me, or I see somebody's accomplishments on LinkedIn or Instagram, it gives me a lot of pride and a lot of happiness that, I helped that person take that extra step and, help them to leverage themselves into a better situation. And actually now we've helped club athletes go and play professionally overseas. So it's come full circle. I've been able to help other athletes to go and do that. And it's not something that I've done. It's something that they've done. And that's the best part about it. I just gave them a chance and an opportunity, and they took it and they ran with it. So that's been extremely fulfilling to see.
Yeah, it is. It's all about the passion that you have for what you do. And I can clearly see that you have that, right? When you're talking about the different jobs that you've held, it's easily different than the job that you're doing. And, now as you're both in an office, but you said you're transferring over to, playing some beach volleyball. How are you balancing that, right? As a student athlete, you can balance, like you said, you're going to be a little bit tired in class, but you can still manage to get the work done and still have a social life and things like that. But as a professional, it's different. It's addicting. It's your livelihood. It's something that you are truly attached to. So how do you balance both, athlete as well as entrepreneurial life in your current day-to-day?
Yeah, that's definitely a great question. And I did kind of reach a breaking point. I think it was 2 years ago, where I was just strung out, just overworked, and I wasn't even aware of it. Because we wake up, you do your work. Well, at least in Cyprus, I wake up, around 8 or 9, do my work, have a lunch break, go back to work, and then I would go to trainings in the evenings, and we would have games on Fridays. and I'd be up on Saturdays working again. And I was probably, if I tracked it, I was probably putting in like 60 hours a week in the office, and then another 20 to 25, maybe sometimes 30 doing volleyball, because sometimes we'd have a Sunday practice and we'd get no days off. And so that season 2 years ago, it was just kind of just like, okay, this is too much. Like there is a limit to what I can do. And I was irritable, upset, was not very efficient. So, it wasn't all good, I guess. But it's nice to kind of know that there's that limit. So I definitely try to manage my time a bit better. And like, if I'm putting in too many hours, then I'll try to limit that. But I get to make my own schedule, which is good, both for volleyball now and then also for work, obviously, which helps me to sort of mitigate that. And there's other like techniques that can help just in terms of managing stress, like meditation or getting better sleep or having like a good healthy diet and stuff. So I try to be smart about it and not push things too much, but obviously trying to manage all of our clients and make sure that they're happy as well. So I'm pretty good with time management at this point. But again, I think that's also another athlete skill, is being able to manage one's time, because once you have that athletic schedule set, you kind of work around it. And in today's digital age, all I need is a laptop and a phone and a Wi-Fi connection, and I can work there. So whether it's a coffee shop or something like that, I can work in the morning, go do a beach training in the afternoon, and then go to a coffee shop and finish up until the evening, and then go home. So, yeah, flexibility.
So where are you located at now? You've kind of been all over the world. Where are you located at now?
Limassol, Cyprus. So Limassol is the city. Cyprus is an island country. It's part of the EU, but it's in the East Mediterranean. So it's like right by Israel and Turkey and Syria. So it's kind of Middle Eastern, but also very European. It's a beautiful country, like weather like San Diego, climate like Southern California, got mountains with snow in the winter, beaches with, beautiful sand and whatnot. And yeah, it's an awesome country. It's really nice.
Yeah. How much do you get a chance to get home and see family?
Yeah, during the pandemic, that was hard. That was like, 1.5, 2 years of being out and away. But I get back pretty regularly now, so about twice a year, which is good. And friends have now come out to visit me here, which has been just awesome. Some buddies from high school came out to visit, and then some of my friends from college came out to visit, and we had such a good time. And I'm looking forward to when more friends and family can come out. My parents have been out here; they're coming out again in February. So, yeah, I mean, it's a far cry from being a 15-minute drive from home, for sure. But having video calls and whatnot, like it helps. But yeah, it's tough being away from friends and family. That's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I was in Texas for 7 years. I couldn't imagine being in a completely different country as long as you've been and doing all the things you're doing. But now we're at our 5 questions portion of the conversation. And first question for you is, growing up, you said you were a multi-sport athlete, basketball, football, until you got into volleyball. Who were some of the athletes in these sports that you looked up to? And then who was the first volleyball player that you tried to emulate?
That I love that question. So Michael Jordan, obviously, shout out Bulls. Brian Urlacher as well. Devin Hester too, because unorthodox guy made a career just out of being the greatest returner of all time. So those are some 3 great athletes. So I would say Karch Karai is probably the volleyball player that I'd most admire, because he won Olympic golds in indoor, Olympic gold on the beach, and now Olympic gold as the coach of the women's national team indoor. The only thing that he could do now is win an Olympic gold coaching beach or something like that. But he's just mentality like Kobe Bryant. They called him when he was playing like the Michael Jordan of volleyball, and he's like, that's an unfair comparison. He's in a different field of his own. And he's just a humble guy, son of Hungarian refugees during the Cold War. He's got a couple of books out, just real smart guy. So Karch Karai for sure. Sorry for the long-winded response. I know these are supposed to be rapid fire.
No, you're all good. I like it. So second question, and we talked about why you love volleyball, but when was that, maybe that first practice or that first game or something where it really clicked for you? And it wasn't just, I'm good at this and I like this and I'm passionate about this, but an I belong moment that you had in your career.
I remember the exact moment. I was on the freshman team and we had our first tournament, and there was this like 6'9" guy across from me at the net. And I'm 6'5". Like, he just completely dwarfed me, but I could jump. And I remember we had a joust, like the ball was at the net. So he goes to like go up and attack it. And I just take it, contact him, and throw it down over the net without touching the net. And he just falls on his ass. And I just remember turning around just being like, I put this giant net on his butt. Like, after that, I was just like, I love this. So that was the moment for me.
Yeah, that's huge. Once you started playing, and you just talked about the moment you realized that you belonged, did you have any conversations with your mom about, Mom, you were right? Has that conversation ever happened? Yeah.
She reminds me of that for sure. And I bring it up with her too. It's like an inside joke now that she was the impetus for me getting into volleyball. So definitely.
Yeah. Business wise, and you talked about, that first invoice coming in. How hard was it for you to stay the course? Because obviously getting that first one it's so hard. It's so incredibly hard. So, do you remember, when it happened, and, how hard was it to kind of stay the course as an entrepreneur once you had your own?
COVID was an extremely tough time for everybody. And I remember being very apprehensive about if I could continue doing this feasibly and what I would need to do as a backup plan. So I have some backup plans if need be. But yeah, COVID was definitely the hardest time where I had to kind of reevaluate things, and ended up bringing more ideas into place, which I've been able to take forward. And yeah, so I think everything is an opportunity in disguise. Like, even if something looks like it's a dire strait, there's probably a lesson in there somewhere. You just got to sift through it to find it.
Yeah. The final question, same question that everyone gets, is throughout your career, obviously there's plenty of lessons, and there's, cliches and all types of advice and everything else. What's something that has stuck with you, that has kind of pushed you through your path, that, maybe it's something that your mom said, or maybe it's something that a coach said to you, or maybe it's even something that you learned through your own sort of epiphany that you think is been so impactful that, that next generation should know as they come up?
I love that. So the name of the club that I played for in high school is called Adversity Volleyball. And I think adversity is probably that philosophy, because the founder, Mike Hewlett, he may rest in peace, he had diabetes. And so he, I think, had 3 limbs amputated, and he was still a volleyball guru, and he was one of the best volleyball minds I've ever seen, even though he couldn't play it, at that point, because he doesn't have the arms and legs to do it. But he never let that stop him. He never let that define him. And, until his very last breath, I think he just, lived and breathed volleyball. And so adversity is that theme, because, champions, everybody has to go through adversity, but it's how you respond to it and how you grow from it that defines you as a person. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up, I want to, give you a chance to kind of plug your business. Tell us, where we can find you on social media, websites, names, everything. Give us the background of, your company.
Yeah. So we're going to have to put a link somewhere because no one's going to be able to spell it, but we're the Guimond Vukovic group. So me and my business partner, we actually met in our MBA, Vladimir Vukovic. So he's playing semi-professionally in Belgium, and he works out there too. So we co-founded a business, and we help student athletes play overseas. So we help collegiate club athletes, anybody with a highlight reel, anyone who wants to continue playing, we could help them find a scholarship to study overseas. So usually it's master's degrees. We can help people do undergrads, and we can help Europeans do undergrads in the States as well. 1-year master's degrees costs around $12,000 to $18,000 depending on the degree, depending on the school, after scholarship, and we work with some really good universities as well. So yeah, anybody that wants to leverage their sporting talents to greater effect, anyone who wants to study, who wants to keep on playing, we'd love to just have a conversation with them about how we could help out. And our services are free. We get paid by the universities that we consult for, so there's no cost associated with it at all.
That's great. That's great. And anybody listening or watching, the links to everything will be in the descriptions. You guys can click on that, head on over to their website and reach out to them. Eric, this has been a great conversation. I loved it. Yeah. I always love hearing the alternate path, especially talking with somebody who's done the English route just like me. So that's always cool. So I appreciate it. Before we let you go, do you have anything else for us?
I just want to thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been a great conversation as well. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. To make sure you don't miss when a new episode comes your way, head to the Athletes to Athletes YouTube page to like and subscribe, or to Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcast. Again, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you again next time.